Everything uncovered at Angkor Wat points to a single question that nobody involved in the excavation wanted to answer out loud. Not because the answer was unclear, but because the answer, when you follow the evidence honestly and completely, lands somewhere that does not fit comfortably inside any category modern science currently has a name for. So let's follow it anyway. Start with the inscription. Break this seal, and the hunger returns. Not wrath, not punishment, not the anger of gods disturbed from their rest. Hunger. Whatever was in that chamber had an appetite, and that appetite had been managed deliberately and repeatedly for centuries. The sacrifices were not ceremonial gestures made once at the time of construction. The altar was physically worn down from repeated use. The copper wire binding the wrists of the dead had fused into bone, which means the victims were restrained while they were still alive. And the residue found in the metal vessels showed escalation. Animals first, then humans, as though at some point animals alone had stopped being sufficient. Something down there kept needing more, and the people maintaining the chamber kept providing it, generation after generation, until they decided they could not continue. Here is what makes that deeply unsettling in a way that goes beyond ritual or religion. This was not a primitive society acting out of fear and superstition. This was the civilization that built the largest city on Earth before the Industrial Age. These were engineers who redirected monsoon floods, calculated astronomical cycles to within fractions of a degree, and designed hydraulic systems that modern engineers still study with genuine respect. People this sophisticated do not spend centuries feeding something in a sealed chamber underground out of habit or confusion. They do it because they have a reason, because they have seen what happens when they stop. And then consider the most important detail in this entire story, the one that changes everything else when you sit with it long enough. They did not destroy it. A civilization with that level of engineering capability, that level of organized labor, that level of foresight and planning, they sealed it. They built the most precisely engineered structure on the entire site, not as a temple, not as a monument, but as a lock. They positioned an entire city above it to maintain the pressure of the ground over it. They designed the central tower so that any disturbance below would travel upward through the stone and outward into the whole system, making it impossible for anything to go wrong quietly. They built an alarm into the architecture of their greatest monument. You only do that if destroying the thing was not an option. Either they tried and could not, or they understood that destroying it would be worse than containing it. When they finally made the decision to seal the chamber permanently and walk away, they did something that reveals more than anything else how serious this was. They erased the knowledge, not carelessly, deliberately. They preserved the warning through behavior instead of writing, because they did not want future generations to understand what was down there. They only wanted them to stay away. And that distinction, between wanting people to avoid something and wanting people to understand it, is not a small one. It suggests that knowing what it was carried its own risk, that understanding it too clearly might itself be enough to set something in motion. The city was abandoned in stages, following what looks like a prepared protocol. The water system was allowed to fail gradually. Sacred zones were closed in order. People left without panic, without invasion, without fire. They shut everything down the way you shut down something dangerous, carefully, deliberately, and with full awareness of what they were leaving behind. Whatever is in that chamber, the evidence does not describe a god being honored. It describes something being managed, something that needed to be fed, could not be destroyed, and was considered dangerous enough that the people who knew exactly what it was made a conscious decision that the safest gift they could leave future generations was not a record, not an explanation, not a warning in words. It was silence, enforced through engineering, carried in behavior, and built into stone designed to outlast every person who would ever come looking. The vault beneath Angkor Wat remains sealed today. No full excavation has been approved, and somewhere in the gap between what the radar has already shown and what the authorities are willing to say out loud, the same question keeps surfacing. What if the builders were right?